Welcome back. You're still watching The World Today on Channels Television. It's time to shift our focus to the African continent. Now, African leaders at the largest gathering in the honor of the United States Capitol have been holding various discussions with their U.S. counterparts meant to strengthen ties between the countries. Now, President Barack Obama has indicated he will not be holding any bilateral meetings with the leaders, but wants them to talk amongst themselves. However, Secretary of State John Kerry has been holding various brief sessions with as many leaders. He and the Vice President Joe Biden were present at the first meeting that kicked off the summit, which was the Civil Society Forum. Our correspondent Amarachi Ubani reports.
It's right in the middle of summer here in the United States, and many tourists and holidaymakers will be visiting places such as the one behind me, the World War II Memorial, one of the many sites that many of the tourists will be visiting here in Washington, D.C., but it's also the perfect setting for the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit. Many African leaders are expected to be at this meeting, 51 to be precise. U.S. President Barack Obama has explained the format for the meeting, saying they will take on a more interactive and less formal approach.
Please sit down. Thank you. No democracy can survive without the active and intense participation of its people. But the opportunities are so vast. We're in the cusp of a continent of Africa establishing its place among the ranks of the world's most prosperous economies and free nations. In your hands, with your help, Africa can and will go so much further.
This summit is investing.
While the focus remains investing in Africa's youth for countries such as Somalia, that may be a long-term challenge, but it's one they're already facing head-on.
The federal government of Somalia will, through the Minister of Youth, draft a youth empowerment framework that sets out the required legislation desired to promote youth empowerment, inclusion, and participation. This will be completed by December this year. This framework will be mainly focused on youth for dialogue, youth for leadership, youth for economic recovery and development of the country.
The fastest growing economy.
The informal talks are supposed to yield results, and many are hopeful that leaders are able to make stronger commitments to the next generation instead of boring them with promises. From Washington, D.C., Amarachi Ubani for Channels Television News.
Thank you.
Now, for an update on that summit, we go live to Washington, D.C., where our foreign affairs correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, is standing by. Hello there, Amarachi. I can see you. So, can you just tell us the highlights of today's sessions, basically?
Well, today, all day, mainly, will be the U.S.-Africa Business Forum. There are quite a number of African business owners who are here in Washington, D.C., who are discussing right now, had different sessions all morning. There was a session that started at 8 o'clock in the morning. There was another session at 10. They broke off for a break and then came back again, and they're having so many other sessions. Let me just mention some of the names of the people who are here for this session of the U.S.-Africa Business Forum. I did listen in on quite a few of their remarks. You have the president and CEO of MasterCard, the chairman, Heirs Holdings, who is also here. Mo Ibrahim, founder and chair of Mo Ibrahim Foundation, is also here. Much earlier, we were talking about financing the Africa of tomorrow. The idea was, of course, Africa has a problem with infrastructure, developing infrastructure, and power plays a very important role in that in countries like Nigeria. So, inviting investors into the country to help to improve the power sector. Tony Lumini made mention of the fact that investors need to be patient because of the fact that African countries do not develop as fast as other countries in the world. Much later, the other session that was taking place before the third session for the speech, the World Bank President, Dr. Shin Dong Kim, did make an announcement that the World Bank and the government is giving about $5 billion to 5 African countries, Nigeria, Ghana, Ethiopia, Kenya, develop our.
So finally, just if I let you go, Margie, what do you expect to see when the summit is over? What do you expect to be the end result?
Well, the summit still has about 1 or 2 days to go, so a lot of expectations for. I'm not quite sure really that African people expect came with really great expectations, but they expecting some form of loan or aid from the United States government. So it's really interesting that they need to sit down and talk to each other, and that they're basically reviewing their progresses that they have made so far. So those are basically what it is. But a lot of Africans here are wondering.
We do apologize for the poor audio quality. We've been speaking to our foreign affairs correspondent, Amarachi Ubani, who's attending the Africa Leaders Summit in Washington, D.C. Hopefully it will improve during the course of the program and subsequent programs as well. But let's shift our attention now to South Sudan. Now, yesterday, peace talks resumed in Addis Ababa concerning the crisis in the world's newest country. But let's take a look at the humanitarian situation in South Sudan. Sadly, there's been a surge in the number of children dying every week due to preventable illnesses in a displaced people's camp, and it is worrying to the aid agencies there. According to UNICEF, more than 20 children die every week due to preventable illnesses like diarrhea, malaria, and pneumonia, which is then underpinned by malnutrition in South Sudan.
A scale-up of responses in healthcare and water and sanitation by aid agencies have halved this number, but as the rainy season takes hold, so does the risk of disease.
This is the hunger gap. I know, because of this displacement, most of the families were not able to cultivate, so the hunger gap is expected to be a bit longer, so will have also an impact of malnutrition situation. So malnutrition situation is worsening, diseases are also increasing, like we'll be seeing more diarrheal diseases, we'll be seeing an increment in pneumonia. So these are the things that will also at one point increase the under 5 mortality.
According to UNICEF, the camp in Bentiu is prone to flooding. Veronica Nyakopai, one of the several families living in the displaced persons camp, is planning on moving to higher ground. Their house was submerged a few days ago, and as the rain clouds loom, she knows they must move to a higher ground quickly. Aid agencies say South Sudan, which gained independence from Sudan, could be headed for the worst famine since the 1984 Ethiopian famine. The United Nations has warned for months that a famine will be inevitable if there is no end to fighting that erupted in mid-December between the government and rebels. More than a third of the nation's roughly 11 million people could be on the brink of starvation by the end of the year. Western diplomats said the looming famine is man-made and avoidable, but they expect thousands to die and much of the country to suffer as neither President Salva Kiir nor rebel leader Riek Machar appear ready to strike a lasting peace deal. At the camps, water and sanitation is still a problem, as one latrine is shared among 70 displaced people, a number that is way below the internationally accepted standard.
In terms of the sanitation facilities, now we are able to provide one latrine for 70 people, which is still below the standard. And now we are still trying to improve more latrines, and also we try to build more latrines for the affected population.